I never made it, but I know what it takes. I'm motivated by a mix of emotion. Got my statement, and I'm reading it slow so I can understand it fully. Appreciate my standing, go out of this world and right on time. Oh, never in my life have I seen the sky light up like this. I'm far away from Earth and I wanna know if you exist. Mission control, do you read me? Send me my coordinates lately. Mission control, am I drifting? Tie me to someone who will love me. Yeah, wait, I think I'll last.
Welcome everyone. Welcome everyone. Welcome everyone to another Ref Brandon and the Todd family YouTube video. Wherever you are, whatever you may be doing, thank you so much for making Ref Brandon and the Todd family part of your day. We always greatly appreciate it. It is a hump day Wednesday, so of course that means it's time for another weekly top 10 countdown. And this week, in our top 10 countdown, we are going to discuss some college football. Now, I don't know the exact amount of days until college football starts because honestly, I normally don't start counting down the days until June the 1st because typically by the time June gets here, it's usually less than 100 days, and that's fine. I'm not one of those people that starts counting down the days when it's March and it's 275 days. I'm not doing that. But typically by the time June gets here, it's right around 3 months, so counting down the days ain't that bad. But I do know that we're only a little over 2 weeks until we get to June, and high school football starts in August. So I know we are less than 3 months away from football starting because not only does high school football start in August, but NFL preseason also starts in August. So in honor of football inching ever so closer to the beginning of the 2023 season, today we're going to talk about college football's biggest games of 2023. This is predicting must-see matchups. And this article came out from 24/7 Sports back on May the 8th, which I believe was last Monday, so it's a little over a week old. And this is not necessarily the biggest games of the year as far as just big games, but they're the biggest games of the year because the majority of the teams on this list have at least an outside shot of making the playoffs. So most of these games are probably going to affect the playoffs in one way, shape, or form. There are a couple teams on here that I just don't think are good enough to make the playoffs. But for the most part, most of the teams on this list have at least an outside shot of making the playoffs. So these games that I'm about to tell you about should have a huge factor in which 4 teams actually make the playoffs. College football's biggest games of 2023, predicting must-see matchups, came out last Monday from 24/7 Sports. Number 10, Ohio State at Notre Dame. And Notre Dame is one of the teams on this list that I just don't think are good enough to make the playoffs. Number 9, Florida State versus LSU. And LSU is another team in this list that I just don't think is good enough to make the playoffs. And the last team on this list that I don't think is good enough to make the playoffs is one of the teams in game number 8, and that is Oregon at Washington. And that team would be Washington, because I personally think when Oregon plays Washington, I think Oregon wins. And honestly, I think Washington is good enough to make the playoffs, but the problem is the Pac-12 this year is going to be really, really good with Oregon, Washington, USC, UCLA, and Utah. And I don't think Oregon State's going to be that bad. But when you've got 6 teams that are all really good and they play each other, somebody has to lose. So Washington could go 9-3, and obviously they won't make the playoffs, but it's not because they're not good. It's because they played a bunch of other teams in the conference that are better than they are. So I don't think the Huskies are good enough, but it's not because they're not good enough. If they were in any other conference, I think they'd have an outside shot. But I don't think they're quite as good as Oregon. And I don't think they're quite as good as USC, UCLA, or Utah. Number 7, Penn State at Ohio State. Number 6, Michigan at Penn State. Again, 10 through 6, Ohio State at Notre Dame. Number 9, Florida State, LSU. Number 8, Oregon, Washington. Number 7, Penn State, Ohio State. Number 6, Michigan and Penn State. And this is college football's biggest games of 2023, predicting must-see matchups. Number 5, Florida State at Clemson. And most people think Florida State is back and they're going to be a top 10 team this year. That's why they're on the list twice. Number 9 against LSU and number 5 against Clemson, because if they win both of those games, they're probably going to make the playoffs. Number 4, USC at Oregon. So another Pac-12 matchup comes in at number 4. Number 3, Georgia at Tennessee. Number 2, LSU at Alabama. And number 1, Ohio State at Michigan. So again, these are ranked 10 through 1 from 24/7 Sports, based on the fact that most of them, if not all of them, have huge playoff implications. They're not saying that they think these are going to be the 10 best games of the year. These might be 10 complete total blowout games. But more than likely, these 10 games are going to have huge playoff implications. I've already seen a lot of early season projections from some of the college football writers, and I've already seen Ohio State in the playoffs. I've seen Oregon in the playoffs. I've seen Michigan. I've seen USC. I've seen Georgia. I've seen Alabama. So there are a lot of teams throughout these 10 games that are projected to be playoff teams. And that's why these are the biggest games of 2023. Any thoughts on any of this, please feel free to let me know. Homes for Our Troops is a publicly funded 501c nonprofit organization that builds and donates specially adapted custom homes nationwide for severely injured post 9/11 veterans. Since the 2004 inception, nearly 90 cents of every dollar spent has gone directly to our program services for veterans. Visit at hfusa.org. Let's go ahead and get our dad joke of the day in here. What do you call a lonely cheese? Provolone. And that does it for today's Ref Brandon and the Todd Family YouTube video. Until next time, it's Ref Brandon saying, just like in pro wrestling, life can be over by the count of 3. Tell your friends and family how much you love them. Bye.